Good afternoon, everyone. I want to start by thanking you for being here today, especially those that will be speaking with me from the podium. Today we have Linda Kropp, Chief Counsel for the Environmental Defense Center. Michael Lyons, President of Get Oil Out. Katie Davis, Chair of the Santa Barbara Sierra Club. And Michael Cohen, President of the Santa Barbara Adventure Company. Thank you all for taking the time this afternoon to voice your concern on behalf of our environment and your commitment to protecting our oceans. I undoubtedly represent one of the most beautiful and ecologically diverse districts in Congress. We are all so lucky to live on the Central Coast and to have this wonderful ocean as our backyard. With this incredible privilege, we must also remember that we have an even greater responsibility to serve as stewards of these wonderful natural resources. And with that great responsibility in mind, I am pleased to announce that I am introducing my first piece of legislation in Congress this Monday called the California Clean Coast Act. This legislation would permanently ban future oil and gas leasing and drilling off the coast of California in the Outer Continental Shelf. We've seen time and time again the devastating environmental and economic threats posed by offshore oil drilling. Today marks the anniversary of the horrific 1969 oil spill off our Santa Barbara coast, in which over 100,000 barrels of crude oil were spilled into our waters, wreaking havoc on our ocean's ecosystem and tourism industry. In California, our coastal communities, local economies, and fragile ocean ecosystem cannot afford another disastrous oil spill. This is why I am committed to reducing our dependence on fossil fuels and the great risk oil drilling off our coasts presents to our environment. Yes. This legislation is one important step toward a cleaner, more sustainable energy future for our country and our Central Coast. We are entering a new and uncertain time in our nation's history. We now have a president that does not subscribe to fact-based information, including the irrefutable scientific data regarding the devastating impacts of climate change. With his executive orders encouraging the construction of 2 major oil pipelines in our country, and his pick of Exxon's former CEO as Secretary of State, it is clear that our president's priorities do not align with our Central Coast values regarding our energy economy, the need to shift our energy policy to combat the devastating effects of climate change. This is why it is critical, now more than ever, that we pass this legislation to protect our coastal environment from further oil drilling and preserve its beauty and vibrancy for future generations. Today we are reminded that we must learn from our history as we remember the devastating impacts of our reliance on fossil fuels. We must act boldly beginning today if we are going to fight the impacts of climate change. Now I'd like to introduce my friend and a tireless champion for our environment, Linda Kropp with the Environmental Defense Center.
Thank you. It's wonderful to see so many people out here on such a beautiful day.
Speak a little louder.
Okay, thank you. We are living in a whole new reality show. I wish it was funny. There are no limits to the current threats from the federal administration to our environment, our communities, and our economy, which all rely on healthy air and water and a clean ocean. We use the ocean for food, for recreation, for tourism, and for sustaining the precious resources that have led the Santa Barbara Channel and Islands to be referred to as the Galapagos of North America. But all of this is under immediate and imminent threat. Fortunately, we have a congressman who understands the value of our coast and ocean and is taking action to protect us from these new threats. These threats are very, very real. Not only do we stand on the site of the 1969 Santa Barbara oil spill, which had devastating effects to our community and environment and fishing and tourism economies, but we just had a major oil spill only a year and a half ago. We know that it's not a question of if, but when we have an oil spill, and that's why we need to take action now.
Right.
This threat is greater than ever because we do have a president that can open our coast to more oil leasing and drilling. And that's why we stand here to support the California Clean Coast Act, which would permanently ban future oil and gas leasing off the California coast.
Can I have my notes back? Okay. Next, we have another champion of the environment, Katie Davis, Group Chair for the Santa Barbara Sierra Club.
All right. So a marine biologist friend of mine who has dived all over the world. What she says, one of her favorite places, one of the places with the most unique and special and amazing marine life, and the favorite place to dive is right here in the Santa Barbara Channel. It's unique. And one of the best places to dive and snorkel offshore in the Central Coast was Refugio Beach. I say, it had these kelp forests and these rocky reefs, and I say had because it was devastated by the Plains Pipeline oil spill. It was one of the best places in Central California, maybe all of California, and it was devastated by an oil spill. It is our ocean and our coastline that makes Santa Barbara so special. The risk of another oil spill is unacceptable. We have had enough. The inevitable risk of spills is why we haven't allowed new offshore oil leases off California for so long, but this needs to be codified in federal law, as it has long been for state waters. We thank Congressman Carbajal for his leadership in making this by putting forward the California Clean Coast Act as his first act. To send the strongest possible message that new offshore oil leases are unacceptable and we are willing to fight. And one last thing, we have more support on this than you think. I'm a member of Sierra Club's National Marine Action Team, a group of coastal activists from all around the country. When the Obama administration proposed drilling in the Atlantic Ocean, there was an outcry, and not just the liberal Northeast, but the Southeast as well. North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida. These are red states. but 90% of coastal cities passed resolutions against offshore drilling and seismic testing. It's bad for coastal business everywhere. After more than 3.3 million public comments and 36 public meetings, the recent 5-year lease plan excludes drilling in the Pacific Ocean, the Arctic Ocean, and the Atlantic Ocean. It would be an incredible waste of public resources for the Trump administration to reopen that process, and a bad move politically. It would be the smarter move to pass this act. Ask any coastal city anywhere. Don't mess with our beaches. Thank you.
Yeah.
Next, we have Michael Lyons, president of Get Oil Out. We all know who Get Oil Out is, right?
Yeah.
28 years ago to this day, America and the world was rudely awakened to the fact that our petroleum-based lifestyles are not enjoyed without consequence. This consequence being the swift degradation of our environment. Quickly after the '69 spill, Get Oil Out was formed by Santa Barbara citizens affected by the oil disaster. And nationally, the oil spill sparked an environmental movement along with new federal the oil spill sparked an environmental movement along with new federal and state legislation aiming to prevent and reduce the threat of similar disastrous environmental consequences from occurring again. Today, January 28, 2017, we, America, and the world continue to enjoy petroleum-based lifestyles, whether by choice or circumstance. We still, America still, and the world still face the same consequences of oil spills wreaking havoc to our ocean and coastal environments. However, there exists an important and obvious difference today from 48 years ago. We now have 48 years of history. A 48-year historical pattern tells us that the threat of another oil spill resulting from petroleum production along our coastline is imminent, no matter what safeguards are thought to be in place. Oil spills in Santa Barbara, Alaska, the Gulf of Mexico, and once again in Santa Barbara, to name a few, demonstrate a historical pattern of consequences resulting from oil production. Even with the most expensive and proven modern-day technology and engineering know-how, the imminent threat still exists today. As such, Get Oil Out firmly supports Congressman Carvajal's California Clean Coastal Act that will get oil out by putting an end to the historically imminent consequences of future oil development on the Outer Continental Shelf off our priceless coastline.
Thank you, Michael. Now we have Michael Cohen, owner of the Santa Barbara Adventure Company.
Hello, everyone. Such a wonderful crowd and all these smiling faces. I'm so glad to see you all here. My name is Michael Cohen. I started my journey of building a small business 18 years ago with a handful of kayaks, an old rusted out pickup truck, and a passion for connecting this beautiful coastline with so many tourists and travelers that come here. Last year we hosted over 13,000 visitors on our tours. Tours that are dependent on a beautiful coastline and ocean. Kayaking at Refugio State Beach, the Santa Barbara Harbor, and Sea Cave kayaking at our beautiful Channel Islands behind us. What a backdrop I have for this speech. We also provide outdoor education programs to schools as well as many other groups that come to the area. How important is tourism and a clean environment to all of us, to our economy here? Well, I have some facts for you, and these are not alternate facts, okay? Work with me on this one. 6.1 million visitors came to Santa Barbara in 2016 because of our pristine beaches and healthy lifestyle. Last year, tourism-related spending was, I'm not making this up, $1.54 billion in related spending in Santa Barbara County. That's $1.54 billion that got spent here because of this clean and beautiful environment. $850 million were spent on hotels and lodging. $45.8 million in revenue taxes were given to our city and county because of a clean environment. The need to protect this area that we are so lucky to share with others in this every day is of critical importance. As a business that's tied to this local tourism economy, I am 100% dependent on a clean and beautiful and thriving environment made possible through a green and clean economy. I started my business at Refugio State Beach. I ran my first tour there. We felt firsthand the devastating effects in our own backyard and the effects to our business in that recent oil spill at Refugio. And its impact was appalling environmentally, and economically it hurt us. Let's not increase those odds by allowing more oil leases. I remain fearful of potential threats that further drilling will hold and reliance on fossil fuels holds. I have witnessed how the oil company that was responsible for the Refugio oil spill dealt with businesses like myself. They delay, they deny, they pay pennies on the dollars, all the while trying to say that they are here to make it right. That is just not true. Take a moment and think of what our coast would look like after a spill the size of Deepwater Horizon, the catastrophe in the Gulf of Mexico. That spill lasted 87 days. It dumped 200 million gallons of oil, and it affected 16,000 miles of coastline. Devastation to that area. We do not need more oil in this area. There are more offshore rigs than necessary here. We need to move to green energy, such as solar, such as wind. There's a project in the Mojave Desert called the Desert Sunlight that produces energy for 160,000 homes. With that, I'll close and say that I support Salud Carbajal's measure very, very strongly. Please help keep our area and support this act.
In closing, let me just say, what a great sight you are for sore eyes. I am so energized by you all being here, and more than ever, we have to be vigilant and we have to be active. We know what's at stake, and we have to speak up. And I want to, in particular, recognize Indivisible Santa Barbara. We have to organize and we have to speak out. There's too much at stake. Thank you all for coming, and I want to open it up to the media for questions. Yes. Feel free to ask a question.
I was here 48 years ago. I was disgusted that lots of efforts were made to cover up the spill with fresh sand so our president didn't have to take a look at the reality of the damage that was done. And we did not have 8 platforms out on the horizon at that time. We are at risk right now.
Absolutely.
So we don't need to even look to the future, but we must, unless we're going to want our whole horizon lined with those ugly things. So
Absolutely.
thank you for your hard work.
Thank
We
you.
just love you. You are a fun.
And you know, we stand on shoulders of people that have come before us. And I would be remiss if I didn't recognize 2 people. One, Congresswoman Lois Capps. For continuously and consistently fighting the good fight on this very important issue. The other person is my personal mentor, Naomi Schwartz. we stand on their shoulders amongst many, many other people that have always been great advocates and champions for environmental protection. So, any other questions? Yes.
Salud, we totally applaud you for introducing this legislation in Congress. But the combination of Rex Tillerson, the CEO of ExxonMobil, and Trump's Secretary of State, along with Rick Perry, as the Secretary of Energy, creates a massive influence by oil and gas companies on economic and national security policies in our country. Can you say no to Trump's swamp cabinet, please, for us?
Well, I wish I had a say, but the Senate is the one that makes those confirmations. But I will say no every chance I get. Any other questions? The media? Nick Shaw, he doesn't want to ask his questions in front of you. Yeah.
You know, I understand that we don't need more oil drilling, but probably everybody here drove here in a car that...
Rode a bike!
I'm saying the majority. I sell solar energy, okay? So I'm tuned into that. But what I'm wondering is there any future legislation that you can think of or you will propose for alternate energy?
Absolutely. I think we need to look at how the United States could invest more in creating incentives to propel more technology in the solar field, in the wave energy, in wind energy, so that we could have those sources come to life sooner rather than later. We can also look at taking away the subsidies for oil companies.
Yeah.
When we talk about limited resources, we got to look at where they're going, and certainly the oil companies don't need additional resources.
I'm heartened to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm being told that's it. Thank you all so much for coming.